Looking a bit grayer than his photos, reputed Gambino crime boss John Gotti of Howard Beach, Queens in Brooklyn federal court today, the object of much media attention. Gotti, his brother Eugene, and 9 others were indicted last March for allegedly planning armored car heists and running gambling houses. Today's hearing was called to set a trial date. But the attention on Gotti was not so much for this case. When these crimes were allegedly committed, he was a capo or captain in the family, according to the indictment. That was before alleged underboss and co-defendant Ianello Della Croce died of natural causes, closely followed by the not-so-natural passing of Paul Castellano. It is believed by mafia observers that John Gotti has succeeded Castellano as head of the Gambino crime family. They say John Gotti is the boss. John Gotti says nothing.
What does Mr. Gotti say to the charge that he is head of the Gambino crime family now?
No comment.
He doesn't deny it?
He's no comment.
Surveillance at this reputed hangout for Gambino crime associates in Little Italy has reportedly buttressed the idea that Gotti has taken control, although no one at the Ravenite Social Club today admitted knowing John Gotti.
No? Over the weekend, one police department source was quoted as saying John Gotti walked into a party here on Christmas Eve clearly in charge. The quote was, like he owned the place. Castellano's death, some feared, would trigger a violent power struggle within the Gambino family. But it appears Gotti has consolidated his hold and moved to quiet dissent within the family.
Gotti has done that, I'm told, by making this man his underboss, or second in command, Frank DeCicco, popular with both Castellano and Gotti fans in the Gambino family. He was last arrested in June of '81 in a gambling house bust in Little Italy and pled guilty to a charge of promoting gambling. All this mafia talk, however, has defense attorneys livid.
I think the gentlemen that I'm looking at the present moment, and ladies that I'm looking at the present moment, have a lot to do with shaping the news and indicating who's who and what's what.
Do you think there'll be motions to dismiss based on publicity?
There certainly are motions that are going to be made with regard to prejudicial publicity.
I'm concerned that perhaps Mr. Gotti may not be able to get a fair trial.
The publicity, however, isn't something the media is coming up with by itself. It's a direct result of the unusual number of federal cases being brought against alleged mob figures. In fact, of 7 defense attorneys in court today, 5 are tied up right now in other federal courtrooms on other cases involving other alleged mob figures. Attorney Mike Claro, in fact, is a defendant in another case accused of obstruction of justice. Gotti and some of his co-defendants might have to hire new counsel, but the judge today ruled the trial will get underway April 7th in Brooklyn. Louis Young, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Okay. John Gotti, the reputed Gambino family godfather, wants to keep coming back to court in his black chauffeur-driven Mercedes. He does not want the handcuff and paddy wagon routine that'll ensue if the government revokes his bail. The bail revocation hearing for Gotti and 4 alleged underlings entered its second full day today. More of what defense lawyer Bruce Cutler called a regurgitation of old news, newspaper articles, and speculation. Gotti sat mostly impassive as law enforcement agents from the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, NYPD, and Manhattan DA's office talked of the deference other alleged mobsters began showing Gotti in the wake of Paul Castellano's violent death last December in front of Sparks Restaurant. One investigator said he overheard part of a Christmas Eve conversation between Gotti and the late Frank DeCicco. Gotti saying, quote, "They've got to come to me." When DeCicco was killed by a Brooklyn car bomb, the law enforcement people said Gotti held court at his wake. All 6 witnesses today testified that John Gotti and his co-defendants are still involved in crime activity, even though they're out on bail. That, according to confidential informants. Gotti left court just a little while ago looking a lot happier than when he came in. His freedom, though, is on the line next week.
It's beautiful, huh?
John Gotti took a walk in the park at Cadman Plaza this afternoon. He enjoys his freedom. The government is trying to take it away. Gotti, the reputed head of the Gambino organized crime family, his brother Gene, and John Caniglia, seen here on the left walking with co-defendant Anthony Rampino, all have their freedom on the line. Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn are seeking to revoke their bail.
In court today, Judge Eugene Nickerson heard a federal drug agent testify that informants close to the Gambino family say Gotti is threatening to start a war with the rival Castellano faction over the car bombing of his best friend and reputed second-in-command, Frank DeCicco. Some might argue, though, that a war of sorts is already in progress, beginning with the December hit of former Gambino chieftain Paul Castellano. But the agent, Edward Magnuson, says one informant in particular warned that Gotti was livid over the killing of DeCicco. He said when Gotti got out on bail or his trial was over, John would have his revenge on them. Them assumed to be the Castellano loyalists within the family. Gotti's walk in the park today may have been designed to demonstrate that there is no war. The government is seeking to put Gotti and the others in jail under the Reagan administration's Bail Reform Act. The theory is they're too dangerous to leave out on the street until their racketeering trial gets underway in August. In other federal cases, the Bail Reform Act has been assailed by defense attorneys as unconstitutional, and this case is no different.
Certainly these men have not done anything that has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the standard that we have to look at. This is the United States of America. We just don't put people in jail willy-nilly because they may be unpopular. That's wrong, inappropriate, and undemocratic.
Unless he can get an appeals court judge to put it off, John Gotti goes to jail next Monday to await the start of his federal racketeering trial. The opinion released by Judge Eugene Nickerson this afternoon reads, "There is clear and convincing evidence that John Gotti saw fit to seek out and to obtain the position of boss of the Gambino family. Gotti allegedly made that power play in the wake of Paul Castellano's violent death last December. In addition, the judge apparently accepted evidence that Gotti managed to intimidate a potential witness against him in another case." The government says that when Romuald Piecyk of Queens recently dropped assault charges against John Gotti, it was because Piecyk was intimidated by Gotti's Gambino family friends. The judge apparently agrees. The judge said, if continued on bail, John Gotti would improperly influence or intimidate witnesses in this case. So Gotti, he says, will wait for the August trial to begin at a cell in the Metropolitan Correction Center in Lower Manhattan. As for Gotti's brother Eugene and co-defendant John Carniglia, the judge says they can remain out on bail if they remain legitimately employed and avoid known organized crime hangouts. According to Judge Nickerson, the court concludes that there is insufficient evidence of acts committed by Carniglia and Eugene Gotti subsequent to their arraignment to warrant the court to consider whether they should be remanded. Still, their movements are now severely restricted by the court. In addition, the judge ordered co-defendant Anthony Rampino to report twice a week for drug urinalysis testing. About an hour and a half ago, Eugene Gotti's attorney told us the additional bail restrictions are too much.
But I understand there were certain conditions that were imposed by the court, and I think those conditions are probably somewhat onerous and potentially unconstitutional, and those may be the basis for a motion for a rehearing and/or an appeal.
For Gotti, prison life in many ways will be radically different from the privileged life of a New York City Don. But as he awaits a racketeering trial that doesn't begin until mid-August, investigators don't think he'll fade into obscurity from his cell in the federal jail in Lower Manhattan. Most mob experts believe that Gotti's control over the Gambino crime family has not been lessened in any way by the fact that he is a prisoner here. It may, they suggest, be business as usual.
The history has been that when a boss goes behind bars, even for a longer period of time than this, they continue to run their operations from prison. What they will have is two types of people on the outside: an underboss, who is the second in command, and a staff member, somebody who is close to Gotti but doesn't have line authority. And generally, especially in a case like this where an individual knew he was going to go to prison, had plenty of time to set up an apparatus for controlling the family.
Prison conditions for Gotti aren't exactly out of a Jimmy Cagney movie either. In addition to color TV, billiards, and exercise gyms, Gotti will be allowed 3 visitors a day and unlimited phone calls.
It's temporary and it's close by. He's not dozen states away, so that people are able to visit him. He's able to make telephone calls, transmit messages, so it is relatively easy to have a frequent interplay with the members of the family.
Gotti's bail was revoked and he was jailed based on prosecutors' arguments that he was continuing to run the Gambino crime family and intimidating witnesses while free. One organized crime investigator says that given the freedoms he'll enjoy while behind bars, all that effort may have been for nothing. All we may have succeeded in doing, he suggests, is humiliating John Gotti. In Lower Manhattan, Mike Parker, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.